Hello, welcome to the Learning Curve. I'm Marjorie Began. It's fall and time for Bridgewater State University to have their fall community read. And here to talk to us about it is Susan McCombe, Director of University and Community Partnerships for Bridgewater State University. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
Well, as we said, it's time for the community read.
Yes.
And what will we be reading?
Well, this fall we are reading The Island of Worthy Boys. It's by Connie Hertzberg Mayo, who is a local author. And I'm always learn so much with these one book, one community reads. So evidently, in 1833 until about 1975, there was a farm school for indigent boys on Thompson Island in Boston Harbor. And this school was created by a man who felt that he wanted to do something for the young boys, and I'll think of the 1800s, the young boys who had lost their family, who were orphaned, who maybe had a single parent, and really had no way to make a living in the world. They became street boys, or for the boys. And so he created this school. And so he would take in these boys and he would teach them a trade, and they would get everything they needed, a place to sleep and food and all of that. And so they would become productive citizens instead of ending up on the street with nowhere to go. So this book, while the story itself about these two young boys, the boy part of it is fiction, but the history about the school and what the school did for young boys at this time, all of that is true, so historical fiction. And today, Thompson Island is being run by Outward Bound, so it is still being used to help children, youth. And so actually we're taking a tour of Thompson Island on September 20th. So
great.
Anyone's welcome to join us. So the book starts out in 1889, and it's about these two young boys. They were classmates together, but then the one boy lost his family, so he ended up just being out on the street, quitting school and being on the street. And then the other boy had a very young sister, and his mother was very, very ill, and she had lost her husband. So here's these two boys, a little bit different circumstances. One mother is still alive but very ill, and this other boy who had lost his family. So he just learned to make a living out on the street by doing whatever he needed to do. So if that was stealing the money out of a sailor's pocket who was drunk and in an alley, then that's what this boy did. And the other boy was hooked up with someone who used him as sort of the distractor. Uh-huh. And then something would happen, and then they would take someone's wallet.
Like
or
Oliver Twist.
Yes, exactly. So these two boys who kind of knew each other ended up starting to work together to make a living. And eventually they get caught, and they get the choice to go to this school. But the school thinks that they're brothers. Oh. And thinks that they're from a different situation. And eventually in the story, some things happen where information is found out, and then the boys have to make a decision as to, are they going to be loyal to each other, or is the truth going to come out? One of the boys would end up probably going to jail. Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting story. I actually have not read the whole thing, so I can't give you the ending because I don't know it, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
But I started reading it, and sometimes the committee chooses books that, and all of us say this, that we might not grab at the bookstore ourselves. But I have to say, when I started this book, I got very, very interested in it. It's a very good read. I love the way Connie Hertzberg Mayo writes the story. It talks about Boston back in the 1800s, and it's so interesting to read how Boston was, and what it was like in the North End, and how people were treated. And of course, at this point in time, one of the boys is Irish, and the Irish were not looked on very favorably back then.
Right.
So there were lots of things that happen in the book where, because this boy's Irish, he tries to kind of hide that he's Irish. He even adapts, gets rid of the little brogue, that he got from his mother, but he tends to, be able to talk without that, so he can hide, basically.
So the man that started the whole school was who? Bradley, was it?
That's a good, yeah, I should know this. Let me look in the book. I've forgotten his name. Charles Bradley, Superintendent Charles Bradley and his wife Mary and their son Henry. Absolutely real people. They started the school. He was a very enlightened superintendent. You know, you might think that a farm school for indigent boys might not be a nice place, but it was a very good place where the boys really got, you know, much better than being on the street or trying to deal with things on their own. So he was a good man that did a good thing.
When I talked to you about this book, and then I kind of looked it up and Googled it, and who would have thought that on this island this was going on?
Exactly.
You know, because everything had to be brought in by boat, and you know, somewhere on the internet they were talking about storms and going back and forth, and there were some incidents of people being lost going back and forth, you know, to the school. But it has stayed as a school for all that time. It's once Mr. Bradley wasn't superintendent anymore, but it did go on to something else, and then it was a private school, and now outward bound, and still remnants of fruit orchards and all the things that were originally planted, you know, by Bradley and his boys, you know. Very interesting that it's there.
It is. It's quite amazing. And I think maybe part of the success was because it was on an island. So the boys were really contained. They had to be a family unto themselves without the distractions of being somewhere else where maybe they would still be getting involved with things going on in the city.
And that's what they said, that there was a diverse group of boys. So they had to learn to live with one another, you know, similar to what's going on right now in our country, you know, where you have people of all different backgrounds and ethnicity. And this was going on the island also. So it really was a little microcosm, and they had to learn to live and to be productive, you know, with one another before they went out into the community. So you said you're going to be visiting the island on September 20th.
Yes, we are. We are meeting at the Bridgewater Senior Center at 7:45 a.m. We have to be at the boat at 10 a.m., so the bus company suggested we leave at that time. So the ferry will leave from dry dock at 10 a.m. And when we were planning this with the committee, we were just going to have people meet us there. And I thought, okay, how many people are going to want to drive to Boston at that time in the morning? So the university is paying for a bus to take people. So we have 40 seats. And I don't know exactly how many people have signed up today. We're tallying that now. But I'm sure there's still room. So we'll be meeting at 7:45 at the Bridgewater Senior Center, riding to the dry dock. Then we will be getting the ferry over, and we were told to bring our own snacks and drinks. So we will get a 2-hour tour of the island, and then back on the ferry, and then back to Bridgewater. So
that's an exciting day.
Yeah, we haven't very often done a field trip with our One Book, One Community Reads, but this was our first event, and then we have a few book discussions scheduled at the Senior Center and at the Public Library. And then the author, Connie Hertzberg, is coming on November 1st to speak at the university. And so we're really excited about this read. We think it's going to be really interesting. And as with books that we choose, they always tend to take on a life of their own once we start announcing, you know, which book we have. We find so many connections, and already people are coming to us and saying things like, I remember that island. So-and-so was my relative, and they went to school on that island. And, you know, so there's always these different connections. Just to kind of go back to We Band of Angels, when we chose that book about the nurses who were captured and kept on the island of Bataan, and one of the nurses was from Bridgewater, we had our first event where her son actually came and talked about his mom and gave the library a lot of her memorabilia. And a gentleman walked in his 90s, introduced himself, said he lives in Brockton, and said that he was there when Helen Cassiani was there. And she took care of him. She was a nurse, and she took care of him. He happened to be an engineer who got captured. He wasn't in the military, and he remembered her, and we were like, wow.
That's why we call it one community.
That's right.
You know?
One book, one community. Some people think, oh, it's just Bridgewater. No, it's a community of readers.
And I'm sure with the number of boys that went through over those years, that you may have some people that said, you know, my father, my grandfather, you know, my uncle, great uncles, you know.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah, that would be, you know, really neat.
It will be.
Now, are there any other events that are tying into this?
Mostly for this one, it's the field trip and the book discussions, and then the author talk.
Okay.
So that's pretty much what we're doing this year with this one.
And again, the author talk is November
1st.
November 1st.
At 7 o'clock in the Dana Molifaria Math and Science Center at Bridgewater State University.
Excellent. That would probably be a, you know, a good one to stop in and, you know, listen to.
Absolutely. We really do try to find books, and it's changed over time. I mean, we've been doing this since 2005, and we used to do one book an academic year, and that was like way too much time to pay attention to one whole book. So now we do one book a semester with some events, and it works out really well. And for the past quite a few years now, we've chosen books with local authors, if we can, and you know, sometimes we haven't, but we did an elephant book that was excellent. It wasn't a local author, but I loved that book. But we've done local authors, Nathaniel Philbick, Ron Suskind, you know, Steve Pulio. So now we have Connie Hertzberg Mayo, and it's really neat because they talk about things that we know. We know Boston, and it's nice to hear about, you know, what's happening there and what had happened in the past. And so we're going to try to continue along those lines of, you know, looking for authors that are local.
Excellent. Now, people in the Mansfield area who might want to get this book, how can they possibly get it?
Through the libraries. I still have some in my office, so if anybody wants to contact me.
Okay.
And I'm sure library loan, we've actually given some to the Bridgewater Library, and I will be giving some to the East Bridgewater and West Bridgewater libraries because we're really trying to get them involved as well. They're right nearby, and they are the Bridgewaters, so you might be able to get the books from there as well on the interlibrary
Maybe
loan.
Mansfield Library?
You know, Mansfield Library should really talk with them about it. That's a good idea.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about the book. Sounds like it's going to be a very good read. And for those of you who can make the field trip, I think it would be a very interesting one. So thank you, Susan, for coming and talking to us about the book. And I hope it's a great success this fall.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us today. And I hope you join us next time on The Learning Curve.